Please welcome our closing keynote, Angelos Arnis.
Thank you so much, Helen.
There's water.
Thank you. I have already some here. I'm sweating already. Yeah, and I'm sweating because this is a topic for me that is very close to my heart. But I feel that when we're talking about systemic problems like the climate breakdown, for example, there's so fuzzy problems that one is very humble to try to even think that they can solve even parts of that. But there are ways. So hello, everyone. My name is Angelos Arnis. And by day, I work at Smartly.io as a design operations professional. And by night, I run the community and publication for now, which is called Join Frontiers. I get excited when Helen and I talked sometime last year about this specific talk. But then also I got really scared. As I said earlier, this is something that really interests me, but also at the same time, it brings me to my knees when I'm thinking about it. But when we're talking about our collective futures, then how do we escape from the analysis paralysis of gathering all the data of the things that go wrong and actually perhaps have bias towards action, for example? So we're going to try to imagine some of these things throughout this talk. So when I started thinking about this talk, I thought that what are the moments that actually are like epiphanies to me, that they have changed my perspective of how am I as a person, first of all, but also as a designer. And I tried to come up with two of those at least that kind of like, how did it change me to become a designer who's advocating for true green futures? And I'll share with you two paradigm shifts. Then we'll set the context for the talk through an interactive process. And before I begin to lay out the holistic designer and their toolkit. So, in 2019, as a newly sleepless dad and a very passionate designer and a burnt-out conference organizer, Hello would be smiling over there probably, I joined a working group at my previous employer in order to work on the company's sustainability strategy for 2030. And being the only designer in that group, it gave me a really huge case of imposter syndrome. What would I do there? What can I do in that team? And so, I thought to myself, oh my God, like things have gotten real. I have a seat at the table, so like now what? I came to find out, though, that they wanted me in that team just because I was a designer. And I had some skills that they saw valuable. I could do facilitation. I could do visualization. I could create stories out of seemingly complex structures and narratives. And I could compartmentalize, which is also very important. And in the end, we did bring to the table, I did bring to that table a lot of those skills. I brought canvases, I brought ways of working, ideas, and so on. And the collective work of the team led to that sustainability strategy for that company. And that was my first epiphany. And if I would have to put it in words, I'd rather use Carl Fast's words that he said, the fundamental job of design is not great design. So I thought to myself, how much navel gazing was I doing while I was doing this other kind of job, that kind of job of a designer that I didn't feel that was bringing so much value. I'm not saying that my previous job as a product designer was meaningless, but I just felt that in a few months project, I was able to really and clearly see the value that I could bring with cross-functional people joining into this team. And I felt that previously my career was pigeonholed in making things pretty, or at most, kind of like, making people who are MPS enthusiasts very excited. So that was the first time that I actually had a career crisis, and apparently there were many more after that. Which then leads us to the second paradigm shift. Not long after that, I wanted to do more meaningful work, at least to me. I'm not saying that all designers should stop doing UI or something like that. I just felt that for me, that wasn't the thing. So I started trying to become myself a DesignOps professional. And so I thought that my way of doing meaningful work was to actually help designers with real organizational problems inside their own companies. And this kind of work was needed. No one was doing it. However, it was also invisible work. People like execs, they couldn't really realize what is the value of that because, of course, it doesn't have a direct impact on business outcomes. So people thought that, OK, this is nice to have, Angelos, you're great doing that, but maybe you can do it on the side. Maybe it's something that you can do when you don't have other projects and stuff like that. So that was very interesting to me because also I now remember that Catherine also mentioned yesterday, actually, that a lot of this organizational design work is actually invisible, which is true. So doing DesignOps somehow made me realize that we're doing a lot of work solving for issues that the organizations actively create for the employees. And although we have all these layers of middle management inside big companies, no one is doing something about those issues. And it's quite peculiar to think about the fact that, sometimes more than, let's say, there can be an example that more than 20 hours of designers' time go into meetings in a week, and no one is questioning that as long as the manager of that designer thinks that this is OK. But if you expose the fact that some of that time is actually unproductive, that the designer could be doing something more valuable, then people start asking, how can we solve that? So this was a disconnect for me, because I think that there are other reasons behind why designers often struggle to showcase what is their value. And it's not because they are bored of doing their work. There's a larger problem at hand. And I feel that it kind of connects to the complacency of business to bad practices. So this was my second epiphany. We are now living in a world of unprecedented change. And you've heard that probably for the last 5 years every day. But we have the pace of technological advancement and the complexity of the problems that we have, they far outstrip our ability to do anything about those. Yet the organizations that we work with, they're struggling with inertia. They're trying to keep things the way that they are. One thing is very, very clear, though. Business as usual does not cut it anymore. And our reality, as it is defined by these wicked problems, issues that they're multifaceted, and they seemingly do not have any easy solutions on them. It's not acceptable anymore to think of terms of we need to make things more efficient. Efficiency was something that was needed, and it's of course still needed, but it's not the only thing. We can't anymore say that we should be moving fast and breaking things and so on, because this was normal maybe before the pandemic or something like that, and we can also argue if that was actually normal at all. But now we're evidencing much different changes that are happening in the world. People were mentioning today about the massive layoffs and also the quitting, the great resignation that happened on the pandemic times as well. So, which tells us also that our systems and our organizations are struggling to keep up with the pace with rapid changes that are happening in our world at the moment. So as we enter 2023, our lives are disrupted on multiple levels. Our natural environment and our health are under threat from climate breakdown and other crises. On a societal level, we are grappling with ongoing conflicts and geopolitical escalations that defy resolution. And on a personal level, we are struggling with information overload and misinformation overload. And those challenges, they cannot be solved with patchworks on current systems that they have created those kind of problems. And instead, we need to fundamentally rethink the approaches of embracing new forms of collective action and solidarity and help us navigate through these turbulent times. So it's time for us to unlearn. For a long time, we lacked the courage to imagine what's possible and how can we reinvent ourselves. Lack of imagination in the design profession means less opportunities to actually unlearn, which also means lack of creative invention. Imagination is crucial because we can break down mental barriers and think of something else that is not there yet. And ultimately, we can change businesses. Imagine what if, instead of assimilating to business, we actually try to create spaces inside our organizations where we could empower people, we could promote social change, and we could advocate for the planet as well. A profession for true change instead of a tool for incremental business tweaks for more profit.